team's doctor disappeared in an unknown direction. Of course, the only thing the team could do is return as is. Later, it was discovered that the doctor requested political asylum as he didn't want to go back home. Jin Il-chul was a lonely man without a family, so he had no one to worry about. If a person whose family lives in North Korea were to do such a thing, then the family would be declared enemies of the people. The fate of people with such a label would probably not be one that can be envied. Well, a young person by the name Jun Ho escaped twice. His mother often crossed the border of China to support the family. In 2004, she left the country forever and paid brokers to help her son escape. In China, it seemed like Jun Ho had entered a different world. With wonder, he observed the electric lighting on each corner, while in his small city they all used oil lamps. But the euphoria didn't last long. The 13-year-old boy was soon deported back. He had to survive a terrible time. The kid was sent to a camp while his father and relatives were put under strict control. After his release from camp, Jun Ho risked undertaking another escape attempt. He contacted his mother and, with the help of brokers, once again escaped to China, then to South Korea. There, he finally got refugee status and even graduated from the University of Seoul. Now he works in the Department of Political Science and has even been on exchanges to a few countries. Now the guy has a dream. If the two Koreas unite, to go back to his hometown and teach his friends and neighbors about democracy. But Jun Ho is not the only child who had to live through terrible times and overcome harsh ordeals. Joseph Kim now lives in the US, has a good education, and loving foster parents. And we can say with total certainty that he deserves it, considering what he had to survive. Joseph's childhood was in the middle of the 90s, the time of a big famine. Due to malnutrition, his father died in front of him. Later on, his mother and sister went to China to make money, after which he never saw them again. To survive and not die of starvation, Joseph did hard work which was definitely not meant for children. He once spent 2 months working in a mine at a depth of 108 feet or 33 meters without safety. In 2006, at the age of 16, he decided that he could not continue living like this and made the decision to leave the country. His choice was between dying of starvation or by a bullet at the border. The boy was able to successfully overcome the obstacles and get to China. There, he was sent to America as a refugee, where he found himself a new family. Joseph Kim still cannot forget all the nightmares he had to survive in his childhood, but more than anything, he hopes to someday see his mother and sister once more. But sometimes, defections are done by the most unexpected people. For example, senior officials. The North Korean consul to Italy asked for political asylum for himself and his family. The 48-year-old Cho Sun-gil was acting ambassador in Rome after the previous one was kicked out of the country due to the nuclear incident. Did you know that North Korea is in the top 3 most dangerous countries for Americans? This is related to its huge nuclear arsenal that the small country possesses. But if Americans know of North Korea only thanks to television, then for the residents of the country, it's all worse. Just imagine a terrible life under a totalitarian regime where you constantly fear for your life. It's not surprising that many Koreans dream of escaping this country, but not all make it. Today, we will tell you about the most impressive defections from North Korea. One of the most tense and dramatic cases which was actively discussed in the media happened in November of 2017. Oh Jung-sun, the 25-year-old son of a North Korean general, decided on a desperate act. No, he didn't think of a sophisticated plan and didn't spend months planning. Oh Jung-sun simply had a fight with his friends and decided to forget about the problems with a couple of mugs of beer at a bar. Afterwards, he got into his car to go back to the military base. But on the road, he forgot to stop at the roadblock. For such a misdeed, he can be executed. He thought of nothing better than to push the gas pedal to the floor and break through the military cordon and get to a neighboring country. Naturally, he started being pursued right away. First, Oh Jung-sun drove with a crazy speed, but not far from the border, crashed into a tree. And what did he do? He ran. He successfully crossed the border to South Korea, but was shot 6 times. The barely alive adventurist was saved by South Korean border guards and sent to a hospital in Seoul. After treatment, the young man stated he does not regret what he did at all, while also talking about the total impoverishment of the country. Just imagine how bad the conditions were that Oh Jung-sun preferred 6 gunshot wounds than staying in North Korea. But escapes among officers are not rare, as it's one of the professions which grants access to border zones and whose people know how best to cross the demilitarized zone. This name is like a joke, as it's teeming with North Korean soldiers and is covered in mines. This is why only some individuals are able to overcome these difficult 250 kilometers. The 28-year-old lieutenant knew this well. He decided not to risk crossing the minefields, instead crossing the border by sea. And so this is how the South Korean Navy noticed a homemade boat in the Yellow Sea with 2 passengers. By the way, one of them was the officer and the other was a civilian. Would you risk crossing the sea on a flimsy raft? Don't be surprised. Such escapes by sea are not rare in North Korea. People who have lost hope often make such trips in groups using small boats. The route is usually across the Yellow Sea to South Korea or across the Sea of Japan to Japan. But then again, he was supposed to return to North Korea in a few weeks. It's likely that the consul saw the shocking difference between the two countries and decided not to go back. As his whole family was with him, there was nothing for him to lose. Usually, statements about such requests appear in South Korean mass media. In total, since the end of the Korean War in 1953, more than 30,000 citizens have defected from North Korea. Well, this escape is just shocking, however strange. In the summer of 2019, a citizen of South Korea defected to North Korea. Chae Woo-guk got to the Pyongyang airport and stated he plans to stay there forever. Immediately upon arrival to the airport, he started reading a thank you note addressed to the Kim dynasty. The man stated he plans on working to get the Koreas to unite, but it's not clear under whose authority. This was the first case in 33 years. Their mass media immediately shared this news all around the country. Who knows what the motivation for this decision was? We hope he won't be disillusioned in the near future. Well, now hold on tight, because the last protagonist on our list did an amazing thing when he visited North Korea for a tour. Yeah, you heard that right. There are tours in North Korea for foreigners, though they are very tightly regulated and controlled by guides and the authorities. But sometimes there are oversights on their part. What happened with this poor guy is unexplainable. The American student Otto Warmbier went on one of these tours. He entered the hotel's service room and took a propaganda poster with the inscription, "Let's arm ourselves with patriotism in the name of Kim Jong-il." Later, he wanted to leave the country, but it so happened that it was all filmed on camera and Otto was arrested in the airport. Of course, his arrest and what occurred in the Korean prison was kept secret. It was only during the trial where government mass media was present that the fate of the student became known. The guy cried and said he made the biggest mistake of his life, though truth be told, his confession didn't really help. He was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. After the press conference, Otto slipped into a coma from shock. His condition was very bad. He was able to leave the country in a total comatose state. He was deported home, but this didn't help. He soon after left this world. He paid dearly for his action. This is North Korea, one of the most closed and terrible countries in the world. Would you decide to defect if you were born in such a state? Let us know in the comments what you think about the country. But first, don't forget to subscribe and give the video a thumbs up. The coast of each of these countries is filled with patrol units and only some attempts are successful. The rest sit at home waiting for the camp in the best case scenario. Now, both men are under control of the government. What do you think awaits them? In addition to the fact that this was the first escape by a soldier over the sea since 2008. But this is nothing compared to what Lee So-yeon had to survive. The woman crossed the river Tamangan swimming. She crossed the Chinese border and from there, of course with the help of brokers, got to South Korea. Not everyone is able to make this journey, but the woman was ready as she had served 10 years in the armed forces of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Despite the fact that the military is one of the most prestigious professions, the conditions in the barracks are far from ideal. So Yun spent 10 years living in barracks with 20 other servicewomen. All her possessions were composed of the lower bed of a bunk bed and a small nightstand. Otherwise, the state of personal hygiene in the DPRK is catastrophic. The soldiers, for example, had no idea what hot water was. They were simply supplied with a hose coming from the nearest stream, the water being used for everything, from showers to cleaning floors to cooking. In addition, the women were subject to abuse from the male officers. Though it's punished severely, few women dare make a complaint to the authorities. After surviving all this, Lee So-yeon will be getting back to a normal state for quite a while, but is already trying to enjoy life now, something she wouldn't be able to do had she not made the decision to escape. But defections have been done not only over land or sea. One of the first cases happened way back at the end of the Korean War. In 1953, a pilot by the name No Gum-suk took off into the air in a Soviet MiG-15. As the flight took place during a regular training, no one had any suspicions. But suddenly, the pilot decided to cross the 38th parallel, which divides both Koreas. Luckily, he was somehow able to land on an American base in South Korea without incident. The escapee jumped out of the cabin and destroyed the portrait of the dictator, which was put into each plane. In the end, he ended up getting a $100,000 award for his MiG. Afterwards, he emigrated to the United States, where he still currently resides. A stranger event occurred in 2010 during the FIFA Soccer World Cup. The North Korean team also participated in the games and even played not too badly, but the time to go home came and the team noticed that someone was missing. Ends up, the